Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. And today, we're being joined by Art Eddy, author of Life of Dad. Art, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Paul, for having me on the show. It's a pleasure, man.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. Are you ready to begin?
Yes, sir.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Okay. Wow. I would say for me, because my first book, Life of Dad, was the first time I published a book, and I've of course written, different articles for different websites and stuff. But I would say while I was writing the book, I would kind of lean on people who've written books before, just in case I had an issue or there was, and thankfully I had John Fingal, my co-author, who has written books before. So he was kind of like my guiding light and showing me the right way. But if you don't have a co-author, I would reach out to someone you trust and ask them if you kind of get into a pitfall. And once you break out of that pitfall, I think, for me, there's a couple of things that I kind of was struggling with. But after that, I got, used to a schedule, and because I'm a very routine person, and just started working from there. So reach out to someone you trust and who's written a book before. And if you don't have anybody, just try and maybe even get the information out there on social media, and hopefully someone will be nice enough to give you an answer.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
I would, even before getting published, is making sure you have a great outline for your book. I think the biggest thing that we sometimes struggle with is, all right, yep, this is what I want to do. I want to create a book. But if you don't have kind of that, I remember that Roman numeral outline in for me, I'm 41 years old. And I remember in high school, they'd have that outline when you're writing a story. It's like section 1, section 2, section 3, and you had to write out that and that was a life lesson that I learned in school that I could use here. I would say even before getting published, it's making sure you have a great outline to follow, because once you have that, you'll be more confident in your writing, and then you'll be able to get it published. If you're working on your own and doing self-published, you kind of have a little bit of free time. But if you're working with a company, you have deadlines to meet, and so that outline is the biggest key to making sure that you meet those deadlines.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
For me, my book was all about the Life of Dad podcast that I started up, where I'd interview dads from all over the world, mostly kind of like celebrities, whether they're actors, CEOs, entrepreneurs, actors, whatever the case may be, athletes. And if they were in the book, we would kind of tag them. We actually asked them if they could write a foreword. And so we got them involved into kind of like the social media aspect of that. And I hey, would you mind doing a retweet, or would you mind kind of writing a foreword, or just writing a quote for the book? And because they put that time in there, they would also share, their the link to purchase the book on social media. So that was huge for us, just because, I know it was kind of the perfect storm where you have people on the show, but social media is great. And also, too, kind of like what you're doing, Paul, get on a podcast and promote your book.
Well, when you mentioned Forewords, so were you reaching out specifically to different influencers? What was your strategy?
I reached out to the guys who I thought, of course, everyone that we put in the book in regards to the tips and ideas they had about fatherhood, we wanted to put in there because, one, people know who they are, or two, they had a really great take on fatherhood, or they answered a question really well, and it kind of hit to our demographic, to fathers, parents, moms, whatever the case may be. And there's a few that, that always stuck with me, like Mark Hamill, Mark Cuban, Jim Kelly, especially with Jim Kelly losing a son and still having the wherewithal of being there for his daughters and all that. So we reached out to them, explained hey, you're going to be in this book. We appreciate your take on fatherhood. Would you mind just kind of going one step further with us and just showcasing your thoughts on fatherhood? And they were like, sure. So because they were I think I already won that race for that ask because they were already on the show before. So it kind of helped out that way. But if there's someone that you really want, I would just kind of reach out. And if you don't hear from them in about 2 or 3 weeks, reach out again or try and reach, go through their publicist or manager, and hopefully they can help you out.
Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Okay, so I am a Star Wars geek, and when I work out, I sometimes listen to books more than I read them. But there was a book that kind of chronicled Emperor Palpatine's early, the history of the background of him. It was called Darth Plagueis. It was about the Master for Darth Sidious, aka Emperor Palpatine. And that was written by James Luciano. And that book was just, as a Star Wars geek, you got more information about Darth Sidious and Emperor Palpatine, who are the same people. But it was just really great. And I learned the fact that as a writer, you want to make sure you're a good storyteller, and you want to make sure that you kind of bring in certain aspects that people might not have thought about. And through this book, there were certain things like, man, okay, that kind of explains what we saw in Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, wherever the case may be. So I've learned that, you got to be a great storyteller. And what James was doing in his book was just bringing everybody along for this wonderful ride. And so it's like, all right, whatever topic you're writing about, fiction, nonfiction, whatever the case may be, you got to make sure you have good stories in there that'll make people continue to, want to read. So I learned just the value of great storytelling.
And for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
From my book or just in general?
In general, any favorite quotes?
Okay, for me, again, I'm probably with the Last Dance going on, and that is the documentary, the 10-part documentary on Michael Jordan and the Bulls. One of the things that I've done in my career with just whether I was in radio or starting out this podcast, whatever the case may be, there was a quote about him taking about he's taken over thousands of shots and he's missed so many. But that's why he continues to succeed by trying. If he fails, he comes back again and does it again. So I would say that, I can accept failure, but I cannot accept trying. And that was one of the things that I always took from Jordan. And I said, you know what? I'd rather be well, no, that thing failed, but I tried, instead of oh, woulda, coulda, shoulda. I wonder what happened if I did this. So for me, I can't accept failure, but I can't accept not trying. And especially for me, I kind of teach that to my daughter. So that's one quote that I kind of like to live by.
Well, Laura, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Thank you very much. People can go to my website, artoffatherhood.net. They can go to my Twitter account, Art Eddy 3. That's ARTEDDY 3. And then on my Instagram, Art Eddy LOD.
Art, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you, Paul. Same to you, sir.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.